Uncoverage is meant to enable what we're calling micro-patronage, which is basically the idea that you should be able to be the patron of a journalist or a topic the same way a billionaire is the patron of a journalist or a topic. It shouldn't just be the richest people in America who get to decide what kind of journalism gets funded and which journalists deserve our support.
Yeah.
So that's what we're up to.
Well, and bringing it back to patronage, it makes it, more of a Medici model, or the people who used to fund classical composers like your Mozart. You are finding the next Mozart and supporting them, making it possible for them to go out and do. I read something. You were talking about the differences between they're doing investigative journalism, which is very different than the kind of digital journalism that often happens now. Can you talk about the differences?
Sure, absolutely. So, I think there are different kinds of value that you can get out of journalism, right? There's entertainment value. There's sort of basic information about music or sports that there's any number of ways to get, and the sort of opinions around that stuff. And most of that is well supported through advertising, right? People want to come back, they want to read the opinions, great, wonderful. But investigative journalism, which is the stuff that has sort of real societal value, you're doing it because corruption is bad for the society. You're doing it because there are long-term benefits to hunting down governmental overreach, or like making sure that people understand the implications of a loss of press freedoms or violation of press freedoms. All that stuff's really expensive to do in comparison. You can't just watch a game and then write an article about it. You have to go digging. And there's not but the same pot of money that is trying to support the sports journalism and the entertainment journalism and the opinion journalism is also being asked to support this stuff, which costs much more. Yeah. So given the opportunity, like, most publications have sort of a cold calculus to make, like, where am I going to spend my money and how am I going to spend it? Is it going to be on the stuff that's inexpensive to make and gathers lots of viewers easily, or is it going to be on the stuff that's important to the society? And I would argue that, like, people understand and care about the big stories, the corruption work, et cetera, but there's no way for them to translate that interest and care in those topics into dollars for the journalists that would help them support that more expensive work.
Well, yeah, and writers also, it's not just publications that are making that trade-off. Writers often are as well, because you are paid a finite amount of money for a story, and the more time you put into doing the in-depth research and the interviews, sort of the smaller your margin gets.
It's a cold calculus.
Totally. This is Tech Zulu, and it's a tech audience. So if we tie this back into, like, Uncoverage, it's a site?
It's a platform.
It's a platform.
It's a platform. So it's meant to be used by freelancers and by organizations. They can be for-profit or non-profit organizations. And the idea is to really turn on the things that we understand that people really care about, which is the personalities of the journalists, the individual journalists themselves, and the topics that mean something to people. So I, for instance, am irate about financial corruption and the way that we have been treated by the financial industry in this country. And I would love to be able to pay for more journalism to be done on that topic. But buying a subscription to the New York Times, or even giving money to a nonprofit journalism organization, doesn't help me do that, right? I can't earmark the money to a topic. So what Uncoverage is meant to do is to help the freelancers and the organizations to organize fundraising around topics and around individuals who are doing valuable work. And
but what are the mechanics of how that happens?
Very simple. It's we've basically built a technology underpinning that allows you to fund people on a monthly basis, patronize. Every time I say patronize, it sounds a little wrong.
Condescending.
But be a patron to a topic or a journalist on a monthly basis, so that you can build that sustained funding that really leads to valuable work.
So you go to uncoverage.com to do that.
Yeah, exactly. You go to uncoverage.com and you set up an account as an organization or freelancer, and we just verify that you're a real journalist and you've done serious work in the past. And then it's off to the races. You can basically use your Uncoverage widgets and your Uncoverage profile as a kind of patronage byline that should travel with all the work that you do. You shouldn't just gather a Twitter following. You should gather a funding following, a patronage following from people who believe in the work that you do.
And do you know what I think is interesting about this? We met last year at South by for the first time, and you were talking about this because obviously your heart's in it. It's your passion project.
Very deeply.
But this is not what you're doing. I mean, that's not the reason you're hanging out here with the tech crowd.
No. I am here under the auspices of my my main job, which is I work for a company inside Omnicom that does marketing technology. So I've been funding Uncoverage out of my own pocket for the past year, to the tune of about $100,000. All my savings, every dollar I've made and saved for quite a while has gone into making this happen. Just to prove that it's possible. And so it's really exciting right now because we're going to be launching with Brown Moses, the famous Syria journalist, citizen journalist, and who became a source for the Times and the Guardian. He's going to be relaunching a site, and we are going to work together around that. So I'll use that to prove the concept, and as well as our relationship with the Center for Public Integrity, which is one of the most auspicious.
I read about that in the Times article. Yeah,
very exciting. So, I think once we sort of have a case study that we can start moving out into the world and explaining to people that this is something that is both possible and probably important to our future as a society.
Well, and the reason I'm looking at my phone, I'm not bored, but I heard that this is an area where other people are starting to play as well. Apparently, there's a Y Combinator company called Beacon Reader that's
absolutely
moving into the same.
Beacon is a really interesting and important company in the space. They're more focused on being the Netflix for news, and I think it's working really well for them. It actually bodes well for both of our kinds of content. I would like to be a little bit of a it's not really the appropriate way to say it, but like Beacon for everybody. But I have a lot of respect for the work that they've done, and I think it proves that people are willing to attach themselves emotionally to individuals and the valuable work that individuals do, individual journalists, and that's going to be important to the future of journalism as a whole.
And I wasn't setting the two up as comparable. I don't really know anything about Beacon except that I was told that they're
a real thing.
They're playing.
They're a real thing. I think they have 80 journalists now. I keep a close eye on them.
You're like, yeah, stink eye. Okay, well, there's something that I really respect about the fact that you're funding this all out of your own pocket. I don't know if you saw the ladies from Connect, but they entirely bootstrapped everything. So here's the piece of advice that I'm looking for. So for the audience, somebody who has a deep passion, and thank you for that. Your passion happens to potentially be one that'll change the world. You're like, oh, please. But for somebody who has that passion and wants to move forward and recognizes it's going to take everything they've got, what advice do you have for them to maintain the courage and the wherewithal to do that?
I would say three things. I would say, first, 5-hour energy. B12 and caffeine,
Plug.
really important. I think the second thing is you have to give yourself regular opportunities to speak to people who are likely to also be passionate about what you care about, and hear from them that your passion reflected, so you can remember how important it is that you continue to do what you're doing. I think, and the third thing is to gather co-founders and advisors who believe deeply in the project, and together you're greater than the sum of your parts. When you're trying to go at this alone, without help, no matter how virtuous the mission, it's extremely difficult to keep moving without sharing the experience with other people.
Yeah. So who are your co-founders and mentors?
How
did you find these people?
Blake Robinson, a mutual friend of ours, is an advisor to the company. Becky Wang, from lately of Droga, now of her own agency, is an advisor. She's been helping us a lot. And the folks from Center for Public Integrity, Bill Busenberg, have been really wonderful and helpful during the course of this process. The nonprofit journalism world has been a big help for me.
Well, do you know what I liked about giving those shout outs? So I did an interview with a guy the other day who runs the essentially a center for cognitive computing and music at Stanford. He was the founder and a music professor emeritus who walked through the lineage of everyone who has impacted cognitive computing since 1948. And as he did that, I felt like I was listening to a Zen teacher talk about all of his influences and the lineage all the way back. And there was something nice, because the world of technology moves fast, and it's easy to forget the people who help you every day and who have helped you along the way. And so I think it's good to give a shout out to everybody who's making your life work. I mean, I've had a few of those people on stage today. It's my crew. Yeah.
It's good to have them around.
It's good. Okay, so we've got 51 seconds. Your parting words or piece of advice.
If you care about the future, our future as a free society, and you'd like to get involved in Uncoverage, please send me a note, Israel@uncoverage.com. It's important to have help to get this done, and but I believe that it is a big part of what we need to do to stay free.
Okay. Well, and I know you did some crowdfunding a while back, and I
went well. Indiegogo too.
Woo! Shout out to the sponsors.
Heck yeah.
All right. Thank you, Israel.
Thank
I appreciate
you very much.
it. You're welcome.
Really appreciate it.
Sure.